What's happening right now is the city of Santa Clarita is being sued by two housing advocacy groups, the California Housing Defense Fund and Californians for Homeownership. These groups claim that the city's rules for accessory dwelling units, which are ADUs, don't follow state law. So basically, we're being sued as a city because the state is saying that we're not following their laws. The city is replying and saying, hey, you guys are changing the rules all the time. You're impossible to keep up with. And when we try to reach out to you to be compliant or to come up with a plan, you're non-responsive. And according to reports, they haven't been responded to since April of 2023. The city is also worried about safety, traffic, and emergency evacuation when allowing the new housing, especially because Santa Clarita has a high fire risk zone. So that is what's going on. I'm not quite sure how I feel, again, about state intervention into residential housing or not allowing the city to look out for its own residents. And because it kind of puts us in the same position with like the courthouse, right? Where like the state gets to dictate what we do in the city of Santa Clarita because of state laws. So,
well, it's worse than the courthouse because what they're saying is, you no longer, we don't care what you think about traffic, and we don't care what you think about density, and we don't care what you think about this or that. You are going to allow people just to put as many little homes up there on their property as they want to. And to your point, you kind of went over it pretty quickly, which is the whole when it comes to fire and protecting people and that kind of stuff. How do you do that when you're building these ADUs? I won't say nilly-willy, but you're putting on there as many as you can get away with, and the city has no say in it. That's just wrong.
I mean, there was this whole, when I was talking to my broker about this last year, before, these lawsuits that I was aware of, we were talking about how the people are talking about building ADUs and then being able to sell them as their own property, on somebody else's property, which is going to have a whole net of ramifications, negative to the homeowner, negative to the city. How do you allocate property taxes? What kind of thing you're going to I mean, it's a monstrous thing to do. But also, I believe that the city is trying to keep the integrity of the city by making sure that you're only allowed to have a certain amount of property on, within your property lines.
Well, why did you move here? You moved here because of how clean the city was, how safe it was, the services that were provided, the whole nine yards. When you start doing this kind of thing, pretty much with no oversight,
right?
When you see what happens, it negates all of that,
right?
So I don't know. I kind of get the in-laws apartment, if you would, and grew up with that kind of thing. So if you have an ADU for grandma and grandpa, and because they want to maintain some kind of independence, I don't see a big problem with that. It's just what some of these people that are building maybe even two on one site or three on one site. And
I think that there's arguments on both sides. For example, affordability, right? So affordability, you have to make over $210,000 a year to afford a median house price.
Okay.
Which is it's upwards of $820,000 in Santa Clarita. Okay.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but that doesn't mean that the state should have the authority to allow certain homeowners to just build and build and build on top of their own properties. It's not in the best interest of the city because of the things that the city's talking about: safety, resources, fire, and where do you report it? Where do you not report it? To your point, if it's not supervised and it doesn't go through these correct channels, you're going to have, let's say, God forbid, a fire where you don't even know that there's an ADU back there, a family back there that could use the evacuation notice.
There's just too many things. Look, I get it. People talk about affordability. I'm sorry. I couldn't afford the house I'm living in when I first got married. I couldn't, even after the first child. You work your way up. That's part of the excitement, especially if you're a married person. You two are working together. Looking for make it a little better for yourself as time goes on. Maybe you take on a little bit more work. You work on the house together. There's so many things you're missing when you don't kind of grow together.
No, I agree. And then I also think that the idea that you have to end up in the home you're going to, start your family with from the gate, to your point, you start with something small. Like I have, because of my profession, come up with really creative ways for people to be able to start. So for example, siblings are getting places together, right? They'll get a condo that has two master bedrooms in it, and then they'll build equity for 5 years. And then they'll turn around and sell that and put a down payment on something bigger, or split the proceeds and put their own down payments on something, depending on the amount of equity. There's just so many ways. And you do have, just like with kids, right? Like a solid appreciation for what you've achieved if you had to work to get it,
Yep.
rather than not doing anything at all because you can't afford the 4 or 5 bedroom house from, when you're 28 years old. It's just, it doesn't work that way.
My first house was 800 square feet. I mean, you could barely turn around without walking into something.
Yep.
Right? Then you went to 1,400. You kind of worked your way up and worked in different areas, and then came here. And the house I have now is like 2,600 square feet. So it took a while to get there. And I'm a realtor's nightmare. We've been in our house like 22 years.